welcome to the Hall of Fame. We're going to talk a little bit today about CRM, specifically Shipper CRMs. And we have Krystian on the webcast with us, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Then we're going to jump right into the podcast. So, Krystian, go right ahead.
Thanks for having me, Ken. My name is Krystian Gebis. I'm the co-founder of Freight Caviar and Shipper CRM, co-founder, co-CEO, Freight Caviar and Shipper CRM. I've been in the trucking business for probably 7 years now, I would say. Logistics, freight tech, more so freight tech business for some time, and have been on a pretty interesting journey building this new business or businesses. I guess you can say they're almost, they're essentially there's a media company and there's a technology company, that's being kind of built alongside each other. And there's a lot of interesting learning lessons around that, but it's been really exciting. And I'm glad to be out here and, talk with you, Ken.
All right. Well, great. Yeah. Before we get deep into it, what made you decide to write a CRM, and what got you down this path?
Sure. So if we rewind back to, I think it was about August 2022.
Yep.
I was a couple of months into figuring out what the next kind of business I was going to build was after writing out my first company, which I can get into later. But long story short, there's about an eight-month period in between those two. And I met my now co-founder, Paul, but I believe you've spoken with at least once or twice, maybe not, but
I have. I think I spoke with him once.
Yeah, so we met over Twitter. I think at the time it was still called Twitter. Now it's called X, obviously. And over a meme that he had posted around some basically VCs kind of getting into the freight consolidation space when it was something that Europeans in Chicago have been doing for more than a decade. Something like that. And essentially I liked that he saw it. He saw I was working. It's on my profile. It still said I was working on my previous project. They reached out and we got together. Long story short, it was about 2 weeks into us talking. We kind of just immediately, vibed. We worked really well together, and we decided, all right, let's go and figure out how to continue building out this audience that Paul had started building on Instagram, LinkedIn, and we started getting pretty serious about, trying to basically get out the latest news in a very entertaining way out to the Freight Caviar audience, keep growing that while figuring out what software we want to build. And as we started talking to it was one mentor in particular, Tim Hyam, who neither Paul nor I really knew him that well at the time. I think Paul had spoken with him once or twice up until that point. And I had actually presented to Paul a piece of software that I was building in between those two companies, kind of like an experiment. And it was kind of around dock scheduling software. I got my CDL from a previous company. We did a couple of deliveries and felt the pain of getting to a warehouse on time, but still being, waiting there for 6 hours. So I showed that piece of software to Paul, and he was super excited about what I built. But long story short, fortunately, through the guidance of Tim, he kind of made it pretty apparent to us that the sales cycles for that software were going to be really long. And he was definitely right. So kind of started asking Tim, what do you think? He had about 50,000 users, I think, at the time for Send TMS. So Tim's the CEO of Send TMS. But he started talking with him, and one of the things that he had mentioned to us that was a lot of his customers were voicing was that they all really wanted a freight focused CRM. Now, just for some context, I came from a deep tech background and was building self-driving trucks for 5.5 years prior to that, where it involved a lot of robotics, a lot of AI. And so at the surface, conceptually speaking, a CRM wasn't exactly that appealing of the effort to pursue. There were a lot of obviously CRMs at the time, but what I told myself was that I don't think it really mattered too much, like right now, what we think this product might be initially. All that mattered was that we were building out an audience that of freight brokers primarily at the time, that as long as we serve those customers and their needs, we should be able to build a business and, provide value basically to a set of customers. And if we do that correctly, then we should have a successful business. So kind of bit the bullet from my ego side for that, and decided let's go and figure this out. Like, let's go and dig in deeper. So that's kind of like the inception of, like, from day zero, kind of how that came about and why we started thinking about, out of all of the technology that potentially maybe we could have built, like why we went down the path of Shipper CRM.
Okay, well, some interesting background, because obviously the audience doesn't know. When I started Stateway Logistics with my two partners, we started to ship for a platform, and we ended up with Ascend. So we've been with Ascend now for about 2 years. So we were trying to find a good CRM, and I tested about 6 to 8. But again, they weren't specifically for trucking, even Salesforce itself, not. So I was talking to a lady at Ascend, and she told me, well, we have a partner CRM system, Shipper CRM. That's how we connected. And that's how I ended up calling them. I said, really? And just because we love Ascend so much, we said, okay, Shipper CRM is going to tie into Ascend. That saves me a lot of time and a lot of work. So we started to use the system. Now, I think the system is a great sales tool, and I think we're now developing the operational side of it to make it just as strong or stronger than what Ascend does on their side. So that's kind of how my part came into it. So if you want to talk a little bit about the software itself and what you do and what it does, we can go from there.
Yeah. So we started on that premise of, like, there's a large audience that needs a freight-focused CRM specifically for freight brokers. And when I started digging deeper into it, for almost every single person, really at the core of what they wanted shippers. And we had this, like, coined term that we would get DM'd like, I would say at least probably 10 times. I'm not even kidding you. Like, these exact words, like, how find shipper. Okay. And we got it so often that within a matter of like a week or two, it started becoming very clear to me that I went through the personal experience, so did Paul, of basically looking and trying to find shippers, like prospects, right? Put together a list of prospects. And when you think about, have, like, the FMCSA has Safer Web, and you can look up basically at every MC number, for broker or for carrier on there. There's like a standard index, standard directory. You don't really have anything like that for shippers at all, right? And it seems like that should probably be something that you have for, like, the United States supply chain. Whatever manufacturer, distributor, anybody who actually ships goods, feels like that should kind of be a primary tool for the industry. But there wasn't anything like that, nothing even close. And the typical methods that we found, and Paul did more of it than I did, but like kind of like pulling up Google Maps, going to satellite view, then just like spending hours on end, just going and looking for, like, where the pockets of the warehouses were, clicking on the warehouses. You do all that research, and that would basically take about half of your day on average. So the prospecting, the research, it really took a significant amount of time for you, and then you'd have to actually compile all that information somewhere, right? Like into a spreadsheet, into a CRM. And then when we started looking into it more, we were like, wow, okay, so you have to do all that research, put it into some generic CRM that you kind of like patch together for your purposes. And on top of it, as soon as you put it into the CRM, it starts to become stale, because you don't really even know whether or not 6 months from now, any of that data is actually going to be still valid, right? And it started to paint this more clear picture that there just needs to be a dedicated like purpose-built piece of software that does, like, one thing really well and kind of grouped together a couple of capabilities into one platform under one umbrella. And that was basically, purpose-built software so Shipper CRM is a purpose-built software for freight brokers to help them find shippers and build relationships. And there's a very broad scope over time that, we have a vision for of what this product is going to be able to become. But right now, one of our, basically our strongest, the strongest part of our offering is what we call the Magic Map. And the Magic Map is this very unique new interface for prospecting, put it simply. There really hasn't been a single map-like experience where you go onto this on a map and all it has on this map is shippers. So what we've discovered as time went is we actually didn't even realize what we built on the beginning, how impactful and how powerful it's going to be for our customers. But over time, what we realized was that by putting all these opportunities essentially onto a map and having geographic orientation of, where potential customers actually it'd be actually picking up freight from or delivering freight to, it now all of a sudden made it really clear that there's a new strategy that our customers could take in their prospecting approach to begin with, right? And instead of taking kind of like let's say prior to Shipper CRM days, you'd take a shipper list, you'd get it from somewhere, it's just in a spreadsheet, right? Or you get a ZoomInfo subscription or Palo or whatever, generic contact database. And then you basically get a set of company company names, and maybe you'll get, a set of contacts. But if you use a generic contact database, you have to, basically the way it will go is like you start by you kind of start by filtering an industry. Then you get a set of companies, and for those companies, you then have to kind of like sift through the contacts that are logistics, somewhat related. It's also a time-consuming process because you have to kind of organize all that information across multiple different platforms. So we said, okay, well, first off, it's kind of, if you take that approach where you go down the list of companies and then you go one by one, start reaching out to all those contacts, you actually have no idea really where you're going to be picking up the freight from at the end of the day, right? Yeah. And the reason that this is actually like important to even think about is because if you're a very small business and you're getting started, day zero of your freight brokerage that you're building, let's say you have no carrier relationships, you don't have any shippers yet either, right? The first shipper that you're going to get, and then the first carrier that you're going to build a relationship to service that shipper, is that foundation that you now should be able to continue building off of. Yeah. And this, what we call the spray and pray approach of like, let's take a generic contact database, list of companies, list of contacts, and just start calling them one by one. You're basically playing roulette in terms of like where in the country you're actually going to win that freight. So with the Magic Map, it changes the entire prospecting strategy from 0 to 1, because first you're identifying geographic areas or essentially markets that you want to go after. And you can just go into Chicago, zoom into Dallas, Texas. Yeah. For example, the markets that you want to get into or the lane you want to run. And now just by zooming in, you're naturally filtering out your opportunities by just a natural component of maps, right? You just zoom in and all of a sudden you can see every shipper that we currently have in the database.
Yeah, it adds, like, give a couple of things it adds. So like let's use your example. Let's say you started. Let's say me. My last trucking job was in Chicago. So what do I know more than anywhere else? I know carriers in Chicago. So versus calling the nation, let's call the shippers in Chicago to start with, because now I already have a carrier base there. So now you have a foundation, you have in front of Chicago, then you go further. Here's a bigger one, that service that I think will help your customers. There are markets that people call deadhead markets in Northeast Denver, Florida, depends on the type of the season. If you land a customer, hey, I land 20 a week going to Denver, and I need to get out of there, and Denver is a cheap market. You just hit the Denver button, you return to Denver, and you say, hey, I'm coming in there anyway. You can offer a better rate as a backhaul versus someone calling out of the market. Those are the two things I saw that I loved about the map. So
yes.
Right.
Exactly. So if you, let's say you have a customer, you don't have a customer, you can just
Mhm.
into an area of
Yep.
interest, right? And then when you click on one of the shippers in the magic map, we actually research every single one of these shippers. So we have about 51,000 shippers all across the United States that we've added to this database so far. And we research all of them. So we'll actually tell you when you click on one of them, what's the description of the company, what's the revenue, what's the commodities that they ship, what type of equipment do they need? Do they need dry van? Do they need reefer, flatbed? And then the rest kind of we have a specialized at the moment, but for the time being, flatbed, dry van, and reefer are pretty much the most common for our customers to begin with. So I focus on those. But it's a game changing tool because nothing like this had existed before, and we didn't really realize what it would yield for our customers in the beginning when we started building it until our customers started. We started talking about our customers more, and it started becoming clear of the way that they were going about deliberately building out a sustainable book of business and what we call lane density. So between, let's say, Dallas and Chicago, you want as many customers on that lane potentially as possible. The more customers you get on that lane, the better you're going to, from a freight broker's perspective, you're going to have pricing negotiation power, for example, with your carriers, because you can be offering them, back head haul and back hauls, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just a head haul, and then the carrier's dispatch is basically weighing whether or not they're going to be able to get a load back out of that market to return the driver home. So you just make it easier for the dispatch team to give it, make a decision.
You have pricing power if you can load them back. I mean, it's a huge, we're talking about somewhere 30, 40 cents a mile. If you oh no, I'm saying to Denver, but no, I have your load right back out.
Right.
I think that gives you a lot of power. So, all right, so you're at 51,000 now. So tell me what's your goal. So in the middle of 2025, where do you plan to be as far as shippers, and what's your long-term goal? How many shippers do you think you'll get on your platform?
Yeah, it's a great question. The one that I would say set out to figure out an answer to, because nobody really knows the answer to that. Literally nobody will tell you. Nobody can tell you how many
Yeah.
in the United States, right? So I would say instead of middle of next year, I'll say by the end of next year. Our goal by the end of next year is to have every single shipper in the entire United States researched and mapped out throughout the United States supply chain, or at least get really, really close to where we basically, it's a very rare case where we start to discover, a new shipper that we didn't yet have.
What do you think that number is? Do you have any idea? I don't have a clue. I mean, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that number. I think that number is like on the low end of the guess would be somewhere around 450,000.
Okay.
And the high end, if you consider all the potential individual, mom and pop type places,
yeah,
the high end it maybe could be 1 million.
Okay.
We're basically on a mission to figure that out and build an entire platform and ecosystem of tools around that database for you to basically, supercharge your sales team. Right. So like I said, finding shippers and relationships.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Well, listen, I'll tell you, and I'll tell my people out there that watch us, the sales lead portion of this and how it's mapped out. I haven't seen anything like it. I think it allows you to drill down in order to find freight in the markets you want, in the markets you're strong, and then eliminate the markets that you may not operate in. So I love. So let's talk about. So you've led with that, and now you're building the customer management side of it. As far as for touches, I want to. Hey, I got this customer, he gave me a load. Now, or I priced the load, I didn't win it. So that's what manages the CRM. So the next time I get a load, maybe I should look at what I priced before, how close was I, or now I win the load. And now I need touches to follow, because I think the biggest thing that brokers, trucking companies end up failing with is if your back door is open, it doesn't matter what you bring in the front door. So you bring the customers in from your amazing map and amazing database. I don't want them to walk out the back door later. And that's what I think the other side of CRM closes. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So you've experienced it yourself. It's the CRM has a very baseline level implementation. And we've been spending the majority of our effort, on the entire database, the researching aspect of it, the cleaning of the data, which it took us about 18 months really to actually really launch. We only just launched on April 9th. And we actually made our first break-even month last month. So we went pretty quickly, to that. But it was basically more of a success than I thought, or faster of a success than I thought it was going to be. I knew it was going to be very valuable to a lot of users, but that's kind of speaking to the power of the Freight Caviar, audience that we've been building. And side, we knew that it was going to be an invaluable tool for us, right? So anyway, on the CRM side, the functionality is very, very simple and straightforward. So it's very easy to pick up. You really don't even need to have a manual or user guide for it. It's when you are browsing the Magic Map, you can save any contact logistics contact that we show you from our curated lists. And when you save that contact to the database, to your CRM, now all of a sudden there's two ways to view that contact. You can view it in the context-centric view, which is just every single contact row by row, or you can view it in the company-centric view. And it's basically that contact is then for contacts, part of a company, are grouped together. And we do it really nicely because the company-centric view shows you the company details, so all the description of the company, the revenue, the commodities, equipment, and so forth, as well as all the locations that you were actually viewing when you saved any of your contacts. So we're smart enough to actually interpret which locations are of interest to you to actually be going after. And you have this really nice, comprehensive, very easy to read entire company overview of all the information that you need. So you might know the customer that you save, but if eventually you want to hire salespeople, and those salespeople might not be familiar with that customer. So having the company-centric view and all the information in one place is super helpful to get them up to speed if they start reaching out to any one of those contacts. Right.
I can tell you, I love that portion of it. I think why it's important. Prior to using your tool, I used to require the account managers to Google and look up some of that data. Well, what do they make? What's the revenue? Do they have a stock? What's the stock? Because I think you can't, when you get on the phone with a customer, knowing their business is such a winning tool. It makes them feel, wow, this guy takes the time to read up on us. You know what I mean? And I also tell those guys is to Google, set up Google alerts for any customer you have. None of my people have more than 8 or 9 customers. So if something happens major, Heinz is a recall or something, you should know. So I think some of those things are important. And I like that, and the notes and reminders and some of those things that you can put within your system. So
yeah, absolutely. So you can add notes to each individual, contact, which is really nice. And then you can basically add interactions. There's a list of interactions. You can open up this action menu, and you can say, you emailed them or they emailed you. You made a phone call, they called you, left a voicemail, all those kind of permutations of the interactions that you could possibly have. And then you can also set reminders. And reminders is really nice because the date that which you set a reminder for, you actually get an email in your inbox, and that will basically tell you on that day the summary of all the reminders that you have due on that given day. Once you complete them, if you have no reminders on the given day, you won't get an email. But it's really nice to, just have that on autopilot and kind of remind yourself, set a reminder, 6 months out or first day of next quarter or next year. You can just have a peace of mind that that's going to be, you'll be able to remind yourself at that point to follow up on it. So, that's kind of like the carry, and that's like on the customer side, the shipper side of the, the management. But we're now, we've been in development for the carrier side as well. So from a freight broker's perspective, that you should be able to kind of manage which carriers you're working with and which lanes they're running for you, or which lanes do they run to begin with, and that you have all that information in one place. So right now, really a broker or a carrier can use the platform, and even when we have the carrier side of the CRM shipped very soon, we will have Freight brokers will obviously get more value out of it, but then
Yes.
carriers still continue to use this nonetheless. And there will actually be a lot of carrier-specific type features that brokers obviously won't be able to use because they don't have assets. And there's some really interesting, awesome things that we're going to have coming out really soon on the horizon. So we want it to be for both parties, but freight brokers have always really been our kind of core go-to market persona strategy, essentially, of people that we want to target.
All right. Well, man, that's a lot. I like it. I just so everyone knows, I stay with logistics. We use Shipper CRM. We're very happy with it. They're making changes to the things that we're pointing out that we've needed. So I want to thank you for
working with you, Kevin.
I'm looking forward to it. It's been good. So if you want to close with anything, like talk about where to find Shipper CRM, your webpage, anything, we'll also put it in a link below at the end. But please go ahead and do so, and then we'll move on. Okay.
Easy URL to remember. We actually have a kind of like a second URL for it, but you just go to findshippersfast.com and you'll get to Shipper CRM. So
there you go. Well, that was the Hall of Fame podcast. I'm looking forward to the next one, and have a nice day.